This happened a few weeks ago. I'm Jason, 32, and I've been a wildlife photographer for quite a while now. I thought heading into the Amazon would help me get back on track after losing everything. The jungle was alive with sounds, and I set up my camp not far from a remote village. They had stories about a snake there, one that supposedly devoured the souls of those who crossed its path. I didn't think much of it at first, maybe because I was desperate to rebuild my career. I've never stopped thinking about that trip. I spent the first day getting my gear ready and taking photos of the scenery. Everything felt normal. I went to bed that night, tired but excited. Around midnight, I woke up to what sounded like rustling outside my tent. My heart was racing, but I thought it was just wildlife. I took a breath and stepped outside. The air was thick and heavy. I noticed strange markings in the mud, like a huge snake had slithered by. I wasn't sure why, but I brushed it off as a natural occurrence. The next couple of days, I met some locals. They were friendly but warned me about the snake. They said people had gone missing over the years, lost to it in the jungle. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. As I continued to take photos, I started to feel uneasy. I thought maybe I was just tired. But then, there were whispers. Light rustling in the trees that made me feel like someone, or something, was watching me. I questioned if I was imagining it all. My heart would pound in my chest as I captured shots of rare birds and plants. Every snap of the camera seemed to echo through the trees. I'd see shadows slipping between the trunks. Each time I turned to look, there'd be nothing. I started to avoid looking too long because honestly I felt like I was going crazy. Was the jungle getting to me, or was there something more to those stories? One evening, I decided to venture deeper into the forest. I thought it would be a good idea to scout for more photo opportunities. As I walked, I felt a cold breeze, even though the air was still. The trees loomed over me and the sounds of the jungle faded. I felt alone, unnaturally so. I thought I saw something move ahead of me. I couldn't tell what it was. I hesitated, my heart was racing, and I felt sweat trickle down my back. Then I just stood there. It felt like an eternity. I finally called out, but there was no answer. I was alone, and yet I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was lurking behind me, waiting. When I turned around, nothing was there. But then I heard a soft voice whisper my name. I froze, fear consuming every thought. It was a woman's voice. I was alone in the jungle, but maybe I wasn't. My pulse quickened. I felt a pull, as if the voice was urging me to follow. Somehow it felt wrong, like a trap. The air felt dense. I wanted to leave. Instead, I took a step forward. "Who's there?" I asked, my voice shaking. I held my breath, waiting for a reply. All I heard was the rustle of leaves behind me. I turned slowly, ready to face whatever was stalking me. My heart raced as I stepped deeper into the darkness. I stepped back, trying to shake the dread that clung to me like the humidity in the air. The jungle felt alive, its hidden dangers growing tangible. I strained my ears, waiting for something, anything, to break the silence. But only the rustling leaves mocked me. "Is someone there?" My voice cracked, betraying my fear. The whisper came again, softer this time, a mere breath in the wind. I followed the sound, pulled by an unseen force. I know it was wrong. I should have turned around and dashed back to camp, but curiosity kept my feet moving forward. As I ventured deeper into the shadows, I spotted faint markings on the ground, similar to the ones I had seen near my tent. My heart sank as I recognized them now. Large, winding patterns resembling the sinuous body of a snake. I felt the tension thicken, my instincts screaming that I should leave. But instead, I knelt down, tracing the markings with shaky fingers. That's when I heard it. A soft thud. Then another. My blood ran cold. I whipped around, expecting to see something looming behind me, but the space was empty. just me and the echo of my heart racing. Deciding I had lingered too long, I pushed to my feet, fighting the urge to scream. I took a few steps back, but the rustling from before grew louder, wrapping around me like an unseen predator. I felt eyes watching, a pressure settling on my chest, like the humid air. I turned to sprint back, but the voice came again, clearer this time, and I faltered. "Stay," it beckoned, honeyed and sinister. The command wrapped itself around my thoughts. I saw a flash of movement between the trees, a silhouette darting from one trunk to another. It wasn't human. That much I could tell. Was it the snake? I didn't know what to do. Panic surged, and I chose to run. I darted through the underbrush, branches clawing at my arms as I forced my way back toward the tent. Every second felt like a small eternity. I could hear the rustle of leaves, but this time they were following me. I didn't dare look back. Then everything went dark. No, not dark, missing. I stumbled, the ground beneath me giving way to an unexpected drop. I tumbled, hands flailing until I landed hard in a small clearing. I groaned, catching my breath when I rolled onto my back. Stars twinkled above, swirling incomprehensibly. But this wasn't the sky I knew. The trees stood twisted, their trunks knotted and gnarled like ancient creatures reaching for me. Suddenly the whispers returned, louder, wrapping around me like a chain. "Leave now," they urged, urgent yet soothing. My pulse raced again, instinct screaming for me to escape this place. I sat up, looking around frantically, trying to find a way back. That's when I saw it, a massive serpent, glimmering in the darkness, its scales reflecting the dim light of the stars. It was coiled in the shadows, watching me. Its eyes burned with an otherworldly hunger, and I felt the weight of its gaze, like it was peeling back my very soul. I froze, a primal fear forcing my muscles to lock in place. I was no longer just lost in the jungle. I was staring at the very legend that had haunted the village's tales. The serpent shifted slightly, and my breath caught in my throat. It was huge, its sinuous body reflecting the silver of the stars above. Was this creature real? Or was it a figment of my terrified imagination, conjured by the jungle's oppressive atmosphere? "Leave!" The whisper slithered through the air again, urging me with a throaty purr. Like a cruel lullaby, it wrapped around me, sinking into my bones. I couldn't move. I felt like a prey caught in the gaze of a hunter. But in the back of my mind, a voice shouted to flee. Finally, I found the strength to tear my gaze away from the giant snake. I scrambled to my feet, thoughts racing. I couldn't just stand here. Where was I? How had I ended up in this bizarre place? I had to find a way out, away from its mesmerizing stare. I stumbled backward, the strange ground uneven beneath my feet. Each step felt like I was provoking the monster. I turned to run, the shadows closing in around me as I dashed past the twisted trunks. It was hard to tell which way I came from, but I had to keep moving. Then I heard it again, the soft thud behind me. It echoed through the clearing, sending a jolt of terror down my spine. I didn't dare look back. I ran faster, swiping branches aside, feeling their sharp edges graze my skin. Just when I thought I could escape, I crashed into something solid. I stumbled, glancing up to see another trunk, but thicker and taller than the rest. My heart dropped. I had run straight into another serpent's lair. I turned to backtrack, but the sound of slithering filled the air around me, a chorus of hisses I couldn't quite comprehend. They surrounded me, drowning out my frantic thoughts. "What do you want?" I shouted into the darkness, frustration mingling with fear. My words vanished in the thick air, falling unnoticed into the jungle's oppressive silence. I was feeling cornered now, with nowhere to go. Then a glimmer caught my eye. Above me, nestled between the branches, was a massive stone idol, worn but unmistakably a depiction of a serpent. Its mouth was wide open, fangs bared and eyes deep-set, staring down at me like it was alive. I staggered back, realizing it wasn't merely a piece of art, it was a warning. Before I could turn to flee, the ground rippled. I felt the vibration travel through my feet, and panic drew tighter around my chest. I looked down. The markings I had seen before were here too, twisting and spiraling unnaturally, almost as if they were alive. I clutched my head, feeling overwhelmed. I had to figure this out. I had to escape. But every direction looked the same, an endless loop of twisted trees and shadows. And then I noticed it. The path revealed itself, marked by urgent whispers, pleading for me to follow. My instincts battled within me. Should I trust this guidance? Or was it leading me deeper into danger? I hesitated, glancing back toward the shimmering eyes of the serpent idol. In the end, curiosity pushed me forward. I stepped onto the unseen path, heart racing, wondering what I'd find if I followed the whisper's call. The whispers grew louder as I stepped onto the path, the air humming with a strange energy. It felt electric, almost as if the jungle itself was waiting, holding its breath in anticipation. I moved cautiously, my pulse quickening with each step I took deeper into the wilderness. What was I getting myself into? The foliage seemed to shift around me, parts of the plan revealing themselves that I hadn't noticed before. Vines twisted like fingers from tree trunks, and flowers glowed with an otherworldly light, illuminating my path. A part of me wanted to turn back, but the pull of the whispers was undeniable. They felt urgent, desperate. Then suddenly they stopped. Silence pressed down on me like a weight. I froze, catching my breath, scanning the dark between the trees for any sign of movement. What now? I mumbled to myself. But before I could regret my decision to follow the path, my eyes fell on something ahead. That's when I saw it. A clearing opened up, the moonlight spilling onto a stony altar at its center. The air vibrated with a tension that made my skin prickle. Around the altar lay offerings, bones, rotten fruit, and even what looked like a tattered piece of fabric that seemed to have come from a shirt. I instinctively took a step back. Someone had used this altar for something sinister. As I took another cautious step closer, the ground trembled lightly again, reminding me of the serpent's presence. I glanced around, feeling exposed. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, but I couldn't tear my gaze away from the altar. What was it for? The whispers, now quiet, seemed to hang in the air, making me feel like I was being watched. The jungle felt alive, and I felt the weight of its eyes bearing down on me. Then, just as I turned to leave, shadows flickered in the corners of my vision. My heart raced as I swiveled around, but there was nothing. Or maybe something was watching me, hidden just beyond my sight. A sudden sharp noise pierced the silence, a rustling, trending louder. This sound was different, more aggressive. Panic bubbled in my throat, and before I could fully process what was happening, a figure burst from the bushes. I staggered back, my heart pounding in my chest. It was a boy. A wild look was in his eyes, dirt covering his skin and tangled hair falling across his forehead. He looked lost and scared, but there was something fierce in his expression. "You shouldn't be here," he yelled, but before I could respond, he grabbed my arm. "Run, they're coming." My instincts kicked in, the urge to flee merging with confusion. As we dashed away from the altar, adrenaline surged through me. Who was he? What was coming? The jungle swallowed us again, the path twisting. But above the chaos, I could still hear the echoes of the whispers, almost calling for me, beckoning me to return. I looked back, torn between the boy dragging me away and the lure of the jungle that held secrets I had yet to uncover. We zigzagged through the thick underbrush, branches clawing at my clothes, the boy pulling me along with frantic energy. I hardly had time to keep my footing, let alone ask questions. "Who are you?" I gasped, trying to match his pace. He glanced back at me, his face masked with urgency. "It doesn't matter. Just keep running." I stumbled, almost losing my balance. "What do you mean? What's coming?" His eyes darted, scanning the shadows between the trees, as if some unseen threat lurked just behind us. "The ones who guard the altar. They won't let you go. They'll take you." The words sent a chill through me. I tried to fathom what he meant, but the jungle around us seemed to loom larger, its secrets pressing in. I felt the pulse of the earth beneath my feet, each step carrying us deeper into the heart of something I didn't understand. After a few frantic minutes, the boy finally slowed, leading me to a gnarled tree, its trunk sprawling like the claws of a creature grasping the ground. We leaned against it, catching our breath. I could hear my heart pounding, a sharp contrast to the stillness that lay just beyond the branches. The whispers had faded, but the tension remained, thick and suffocating. "Why are you here? You shouldn't have come," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper as if the jungle itself could listen. "I didn't know," I replied, my own frustration bubbling up. "I followed the voices. What were they? What's the altar for, and what do you mean by, 'they'll take me'?" He swallowed hard, looking down at the ground. "You didn't hear them? The stories? There's a curse around the altar. Those who are drawn to it, they never return. The spirit of the jungle, the devil snake. It consumes souls." "A devil snake?" I felt a shiver crawl up my spine. "But why? What does it want?" He met my gaze, his expression grave. "To satisfy its hunger. It feeds on the lost, the curious. They say once you feel its pull, you're marked for it. I'm not sure why it hasn't taken you yet." My breath quickened again. The weight of his words settled on my shoulders. I had stumbled into something far beyond my understanding, and it was growing darker beneath the canopy, shadows shifting like figures preparing to rise. Before I could respond, a howl cut through the stillness. It was primal, echoing through the trees and vibrating in my bones. Panic surged again, flooding my body with a sense of urgency. "We need to get out of here," I shouted, pushing off the tree, ready to keep moving. But the boy stopped me. "No! We can't go back that way." His eyes were wide, scanning our surroundings. "We need to find shelter. They won't stop hunting us." I felt the whispers return in the back of my mind, a soft, alluring promise that trembled against my senses. "What do you mean? Who will hunt us?" His eyes fell to the underbrush, and he swallowed hard. "The Guardians. They're already on our trail." Just then, the undergrowth rustled again, this time closer, more aggressive. I knew we weren't alone. The boy and I exchanged terrified glances, then sprinted deeper into the jungle where the shadows loomed ever darker. I could feel the weight of my choices wrap around me like chains, the jungle crying out for what it had lost. And I still didn't know whether I would be among them. We pressed deeper into the jungle, heartbeats pounding in rhythm with the fluttering leaves above us. Each corner we rounded felt like a step into an abyss. My mind raced, trying to piece together the boy's frantic warnings and the chilling howls that echoed in the distance. "Which way?" I demanded, desperate for direction at a time when everything felt chaotic and hostile. "Over there." He pointed to a thicket that seemed denser, more protective than the rest. "We can hide inside." Without hesitation, we plunged into the tangle of vines and leaves. The air was thick and humid, wrapping around us like a shroud. I pressed my body against the coolness of the ground, quieting my breath. My heart pounded dangerously loud in my ears. "Do you think they saw us?" I whispered, fearing the answer more than the howl that had urged us into this chaos. He shook his head, wide-eyed and panting. "No, but they can smell fear. We need to stay quiet." Moments stretched like hours as we waited, unsure of what was approaching. I squinted, doing my best to peer through the branches. The forest was alive, every rustle echoing like a death knell in my head. I remembered the boy's warnings about the curse and the devil snake, an inexplicable dread coiled around my chest. Suddenly I caught sight of movement. Shadows shifted in and out of focus. Tall figures, dark and elongated, moved with unsettling grace. I turned to the boy, my voice barely escaping my lips. "What are they?" "Guardians," he hissed, his face pale as he peered through a gap in the foliage. "They protect the altar. If they find us..." I didn't need him to finish. Panic coursed through me as the figures drew closer, their eyes reflecting a faint glow. I glanced back. We couldn't just hide here forever. With a trembling breath, I whispered, "We have to get out." But how? The remaining escape routes loomed smaller and more treacherous with every passing moment. It was a trap, this jungle, designed to ensnare me just as it had countless others. Suddenly, one of the guardians stopped, its head tilted as if listening. A second later, it turned and pointed right at our hiding spot. My stomach dropped. They knew we were here. "Run!" The boy's voice cracked with urgency. He bolted deeper into the underbrush, and I followed without thinking. My feet barely touched the ground as we dashed away from the thicket, dodging branches and roots that threatened to trip us up. The howls grew distant but mixed with a new, daunting sound. Hissing. The very air turned thick with warning, the atmosphere shifting in a full cycle of dread. I felt as if tendrils of the jungle itself were reaching out for me. "Where do we go?" I gasped, feeling fatigue clawing at me. "The cave," he shouted back, pointing ahead to a dark opening in the rocks that loomed like the mouth of a giant beast. It felt wrong, but it was our only option. Just as we reached the entrance, a shadow loomed behind us. I turned to see the guardian emerging from the darkness, its eyes locked onto mine, hungry and unyielding. That's when everything went dark, as the jungle swallowed me whole. When I woke, the world around me was a blur of shadows and muted colors. The cave's interior was damp and stifling, the air thick with the scent of moss and decaying leaves. I blinked, trying to shake off the disorientation. My heart raced as memories of the chase flooded back, the guardian, the hissing. "They're coming," I muttered, scrambling to my feet. The boy was crouched beside me, his face drawn and anxious. "We need to move," he whispered urgently, glancing toward the cave entrance. "They might not follow us in here, but we can't stay long." I shot a quick look at the opening, its dark maw seeming to pulse like a heartbeat. "What now?" "Follow me." He led us deeper into the cave, his small figure darting through the dimness. I struggled to keep up, the uneven ground slowing my pace. Every sound seemed amplified, the drip of water echoing off the walls, the scuttling of unseen creatures. Anxiety clawed at me as every instinct screamed to turn back toward the entrance. "Do you know where we're going?" I asked, forcing the words out as we rounded a bend. He turned and nodded, a flicker of hope igniting in his eyes. "I think there's another exit. If we can reach it, we might be safe." "Safe from what?" I replied, dread pooling in my stomach. But I already sensed the answer. The guardians were close. I could feel it in my bones. As we pressed on, the cave narrowed, the walls closing in on us. I fumbled for my phone, heart sinking when I found it dead. No light, no comfort. "Over here," he called, excitement tinging his voice. I rushed to catch up, and soon I saw it, a faint glimmer ahead. The boy stopped at a large, jagged rock that jutted out from the wall. It cast an odd light, illuminating strange markings carved into the stone. They looked ancient, swirling patterns that seemed to move when I glanced away. My breath hitched as I traced a finger over them. "What is this?" I asked, captivated and afraid. "It's the altar," he said, fear creeping back into his tone. "We're close to it. If they're guarding it, then the legends, they might be true." Before I could ask what he meant, an earth-shaking quake erupted. The ground trembled beneath us, sending pebbles skittering across the floor. "Run!" he shouted, urgency flooding through his voice. We had to get away from the altar. In that moment, it felt like the cave itself was trying to keep us trapped, like the jungle outside. We sprinted deeper into the cave as the tremors grew more violent, the air pulsing with a strange energy. My heart pounded wildly. I risked a glance back and saw glowing eyes peering from the shadows, the guardians inching closer. Then, just as hope began to dim, I stumbled upon a narrow passage off to the side. This way. We squeezed through the opening, my heart racing while the sounds of the collapse echoed behind us. All I could think was escape. That was all that mattered now. Just when I thought we were clear, the ground gave way beneath my feet. I fell into another cavern, gasping as cool air enveloped me. "Where are we?" I shouted, trying to find the boy in the darkness. But the only response was silence. That's when I heard the hissing again, much closer this time. I turned, breath hitching in my throat. Something slithered in the shadows and panic shot through me. I wasn't alone. I squinted into the shadows, trying to make out the shape moving towards me. The hissing grew louder, a snake-like sound that threatened to drown out my panic. My instincts kicked in, and I took a cautious step back, but I didn't want to turn around. I could feel the weight of those glowing eyes still watching. "Hello," I called, my voice shaking. "Is anyone there?" No response. Just the hissing. It was low and rhythmic, sending shivers down my spine. I leaned against the cool wall of the cavern, searching for something, anything, that could help me. My fingers brushed against the surface, sending a dull echo through the chamber. It felt like it was alive. Suddenly, I heard a rustle in the darkness. A figure emerged, but it wasn't the boy. It was a tall, lean being covered in scales that shimmered like obsidian in the dim light. I stood frozen, my heart racing as recognition flooded back. This was a guardian, one of the legends the boy had spoken of. The creature's eyes blazed, glowing fiercely as it stared at me. I felt the weight of its gaze, heavy with intent. Then, a shrill cry pierced the air, pulling my focus back to the shadows. "Jasper!" I shouted, desperate to find the boy. I forced myself to turn away from the guardian, my legs trembling. "Where are you?" I could hear him somewhere in the distance. A faint whimper echoed back. My pulse quickened. It was enough of a signal to ignite my fear into full-blown panic. I darted away from the guardian, hoping to find him and escape. Each step felt like it could be my last, the guardian hot on my trail. But the cavern twisted and turned, each path a dead end. I could sense the guardian's presence, always lingering, always watching. Then I heard it again, the hissing, now louder, as if it had multiplied. My breath caught in my throat when I rounded a corner and stumbled upon a deeper part of the cave. I froze. There was a large puddle of water in a shallow crevice, reflecting dim light from somewhere above. But it wasn't the water that caught my attention. It was the markings on the ground, just like the ones by the altar. They were etched deeply into the stone, overlapping in chaotic patterns. I knelt down to examine them. "What is this?" I whispered, my voice barely audible over the sounds of hissing. Then I felt it. A powerful energy pulsed from the markings, warming my skin. I had to remember, the legends talked about a way to control the guardians, to bind them to the altar. What if this was part of that power? Just as thoughts raced through my mind, I heard the boy's voice call out once more. "Help! Jasper!" I yelled. I scrambled to my feet and rushed toward the sound. But as I dashed back the way I had come, I felt the ground tremble beneath me. The guardian was behind me, closing the distance. Adrenaline surged as I ran faster, a desperate instinct to survive overriding all my thoughts. I hadn't realized how close I was to the edge of the cavern. One misstep could lead me straight into darkness. The hissing grew louder, almost echoing my own fear. It was now or never. And then everything went dark. I fell hard, the ground beneath me giving way as I plummeted. I felt the rush of air whip past my face, but there was no time to scream. I braced for impact, my heart pounding against my ribs like a wild drum. When I finally hit the bottom, a jarring pain shot up my leg. I gasped, struggling to catch my breath, disoriented and terrified. The darkness enveloped me completely. I blinked, trying to adapt to the lack of light. The hissing was still there, now echoing from multiple directions. "Jasper!" I called out again, but my voice felt small and swallowed by the cave. I shifted, forcing myself to stand. Pain seared through my leg, but I ignored it. I couldn't give up on Jasper. I had to find him. I stumbled forward in the dark, reaching out for something solid to guide me. My fingers grazed the cold wall, and I used it to help myself balance. With every step, the hissing grew louder, morphing into a haunting chorus. I was not alone. That's when I saw a flicker of light ahead. I moved toward it, my heart racing, hope mixing with fear. As I approached, I realized it was a small opening, a narrow passage illuminated by an eerie glow. It pulsed softly, like a heartbeat. I hesitated. The markings I had seen earlier pulsed in my mind, urging me to keep going. It felt like the only way. With a deep breath, I entered the passage, squeezing my way through the tight space. As I emerged on the other side, the sight made my breath hitch. A vast chamber opened up before me, filled with ancient symbols shimmering on the walls. In the center sat the altar from the legends, the very place said to control the Guardians. The air felt electric. But that wasn't all. Jasper lay unconscious on the ground, barely visible in the dim light. Relief washed over me, chased quickly by a new wave of panic as I noted the shadow looming over him. The Guardian. It was more massive than I had imagined, its scales glistening, a living embodiment of nightmares. Its eyes locked onto me, anticipation radiating from its powerful presence. "Stay away from him," I shouted, my voice breaking. With trembling hands, I searched the ground for anything I could use. I needed to protect Jasper. I needed to save him. The Guardian's hissing grew louder, vibrating through the room as it moved towards me, intimidating and poised. I backed up, glancing at the altar. The markings I saw earlier were faintly glowing around it. This was my chance. I remembered the legends about calling the Guardians to help, to control them. But could I do it? The Guardian lunged forward, a flash of scales and teeth. I instinctively reached for the altar, my fingers pressed against the warm markings. They pulsed at my touch, sending ripples of energy through me. Suddenly I felt a deep connection with the stone. The room vibrated in response. The Guardian froze, its menacing hiss turning into something more subdued. It was reacting to me. I gasped, hoping this was the answer that could save us both. But just as quickly, a tremor rocked the ground. The walls of the cavern began to shake, and the hissing intensified once again. "Now what?" I whispered, desperation creeping in as the darkness seemed to close in around us. Then, from behind me, I heard another voice, a sinister whisper that chilled me to the bone. "You shouldn't have come here." I whipped around to see the shadows rippling, twisting in and out of the dim light like a living nightmare. The Guardian remained still, its gaze intent on me. But now the whispers were growing stronger, more tangible. I struggled to comprehend what was happening. A new presence was emerging, one that felt oppressive, ancient, and bloodthirsty. "Leave now," echoed the voice, smooth yet laced with malice, wrapping around me like a constricting vine. The hairs on my neck stood on end. "Get away from him," I shouted, my voice choking on desperation. No response. The shadows thickened, forming vague silhouettes that danced on the edges of the light, waiting, watching. I felt my heart pound in my chest, the rhythm of fear drumming louder each second. The Guardian, suspended between aggression and curiosity, regarded me silently, as if it were weighing my intentions against its own desperation for power. The pulsing markings on the altar throbbed beneath my fingers, and suddenly I remembered the legends I had heard. Perhaps the altar held the key to controlling the Guardian, not as a master but as an ally. With a surge of courage, I pressed against the warm symbols once more, feeling the flow of energy surge through me. "I'm not here to harm you," I called out, steadying my breath despite the palpable dread. "I just want to save my friend. Please, help us." The shadows echoed my plea with a cacophony of whispers and screams, growing frantic as though the jungle itself was at war with itself. The Guardian shifted, its slitted eyes narrowing but not retreating. A sliver of hope ignited within me. "Look at the altar," I implored, risking a step closer. "If I can commune with your essence, perhaps we can break the cycle. Together. You don't need to guard the altar alone." In that moment, the earth trembled again, sending vibrations crackling through my bones. I mustered every ounce of courage I had left, the pulsing markings radiating warmth in response to my emotions. I imagined the countless souls trapped in the jungle, the lost wanderers who became part of its dark fabric. I had no idea if this would work, but I had no other choice. "Let us go," I cried, reaching out for the Guardian, channeling everything I felt. A rush of energy surged, coursing through me, and I focused on a connection, something primal and ancient. The ground shook violently as shadows writhed in agitation, sensing the shift in the energies. But then I caught sight of Jasper, unconscious behind me, vulnerable and fragile. Panic surged again. No, not now. Without thinking, I closed my eyes, focusing on the Guardian, willing it to understand. The whispers quieted for a second, and I felt a pulse, a mutual understanding. I opened my eyes, locking onto the Guardian's gaze, feeling the vibrations of its pulse with my own heart. "Help us," I whispered, granting the Guardian the only power I could, my trust. The shadows tightened, swirling impatiently, but the Guardian's eyes softened, and for a brief moment I could have sworn I caught a flicker of recognition, a glimpse of the creature it had once been before becoming a protector of the altar. But then the presence returned, dark and insistent. I stumbled backward as the shadows coalesced into an anguished face, twisted with fury. "You've taken too much," it snarled, lunging toward me as the Guardian hissed in warning. "Go!" I shouted at Jasper, desperately willing him to awaken. I turned back to the Guardian and pointed at the altar again. "We need to unite. This darkness doesn't control you. Don't let it consume us." Just then, a brilliant flash of light erupted from the altar as the markings burst into vibrancy, washing over the clearing with a wave of illumination. The Guardian recoiled momentarily, and I saw a flicker of hesitation in its gaze. The darkness screamed and recoiled. "Now!" I yelled, reaching for Jasper. I pulled him to me, feeling the warmth of his body as I pressed my back against the altar. I concentrated on channeling the Guardian's energy, pleading with it to break free from the malevolent shadows. The light intensified, filling the chamber, and I felt a rupture in the space around me. The shadows screamed, their power ebbing as the Guardian moved forward, flooding the altar with light, finally pushing against the darkness. The roar of the jungle surged around us, drowning out the whispers as the Guardian defended not only us, but also the legacy it had long tried to protect. The energy erupted into a maelstrom as the shadows danced, shrieked, and gradually dissipated. Then everything stopped. The silence enveloped us like a blanket. I opened my eyes, heart racing as I staggered back, still gripping Jasper tightly. He stirred, blinking in confusion, and I was overcome with relief. We were still in the ominous cavern, but the shadows had receded. The Guardian stood at the altar, no longer an executioner but a guardian once more. "What happened?" Jasper rasped, holding onto my arm. "I felt something ancient," I replied, still panting. "But it's not over yet." I saw shadows lingering at the edges of the cave, a quiet reminder of the darkness that could return. I turned to the Guardian, whose vibrant eyes held a hint of renewed purpose. "Will you let us go?" In response, the Guardian bowed its massive head, then turned, a path appearing where the ground once felt lost. I grasped Jasper's hand tightly, and together we hurried toward the exit it revealed, not sure what lay ahead beyond the cavern or if we truly were free. As we made our way through the cave, the faint whispers trailed behind us, weaving into my mind even as we escaped. Questions lingered. Were the jungle's spirits appeased? Would they reclaim us again someday? And what had truly happened in those moments of darkness? I didn't have answers. But as the light broke through the cave's entrance, the sun's rays falling on us felt much like a promise. One of uncertainty, perhaps, but one that sparked a flicker of hope that would guide me forward. For now I was free, but I knew instinctively that the jungle would always have its secrets, waiting patiently in the shadows.